So today is the last day of February, and I've been looking at Bitcoin charts and everything, and I kind of want to do a video talking about Bitcoin's price. I do this about every year because there's so many naysayers out there that talk about, oh, Bitcoin's doomed, it's, gloom and gloom. It's stagnant. And the problem is Bitcoin isn't. And it's this misconception I think we get involved. And it's a psychological concept that's also observed in the stock market, in the bond market, really anything that has a market or a capitalistic driven value behind it. People don't see the year to year or the 2 or 3 or 5 year market periods. They see the day to day. And as you know, the market can change very rapidly day to day. So I did this a few years ago, I think like 2 years ago, back in 2014 when, if you don't remember, the prices were going crazy. It was a time when the prices were going up. I remember from one month to another, it wasn't uncommon to see a 6, 12, sometimes 14-fold value increase, which we can only dream of now. But at the time, it was unbelievable. And I was saying, oh, this is great, Bitcoin's doing good. But at the same time, I had some skepticism, and I was saying, we should probably be a little concerned. No market can grow this rapidly. And I had a lot of naysayers saying, no, this is just the Bitcoin market. So I want to look at some charts now. I'm going to try out some experimental stuff with a video, so I might not even be in the video at all. I might put a thing over here. I'm not so sure yet. But I want to look at some charts. So first of all, let's look at the chart. And I'm going to put a chart up here of the Bitcoin's price since 2012. So on February 28th, 2012, Bitcoin's price was $5.06. Seems still unbelievable now. It really does. A year later, on February 28th, 2013, Bitcoin's price rose to $31.20. This was a 6-fold increase in a 1-year period. I mean, you don't see these kind of changes on any market, or really any market. Cryptocurrencies, I mean, there are some very experimental blue chip stocks, but for the most part, you don't see these kind of rapid increases of price without a rapid decrease in price. Market driven. February 28th, 2014, we see a price of $586.52. Now, I want to remind you, at its peak, Bitcoin was at over $1,200 a coin in 2014. This is when everybody was saying the price is going up. And it's interesting because I remember talking to people that were selling out, and I mean, I did too. I can't, but I mean, I don't want to use my own personal experiences. They were selling out at 7, 8, 900, sometimes 1,000. To be honest, it wasn't at 1,000 over the $1,000 threshold for very long, but it was interesting because everyone was so excited. The price was doing great. Everyone was in love with this cryptocurrency called Bitcoin, and at the same time too, let's not forget all the other altcoins and cryptocurrencies. They were all doing exceptionally well. I think Purecoin, one of my favorite coins still to this day, was at over $8 or $9. I mean, for someone who bought in at cents, it was looking at this coin and saying, what's going on? You can see my face expression, like, what was going on? Like, this isn't sustainable. At least, but then I had people out there saying, it is, it's just the market is growing and rapidly gaining a user base. Now, over all this time, I want to stop for a second at 2014. Over this time, technological innovation was rapidly experimenting with Bitcoin. Exchanges, services, products were all being experimented using the Bitcoin economy. And relative as well, one of the things that gave Bitcoin a namesake, I have to give it credit, was the Silk Road and the illegal drug market that was attracted to Bitcoin. However, it wasn't its only major feature. I guess I don't want to call the word feature, but major price thing. Because what happened, this is details for like a 3-hour video I got compressed. But it did bring people in. It brought name attention to Bitcoin with the Silk Road. And in that brought in legit businesses and investors and people that were interested in bringing, I don't want to use the word legitness, but it doesn't work. But this idea of credibility to the Bitcoin economy. And with that we saw, and over these years, let me remind you, I remember back in the day when it wasn't uncommon to have an exchange go down every 2 or 3 months and just disappear. Money wasn't there, and I mean, still today with Cryptsy, we had that happen about last October. The trust in the Bitcoin economy and marketplace is still leaves a lot to be desired. Fast forward to 2015, after, if you see on the chart here, after we came down from the peak that was 2014, we had a price of $251, which looking back to 2013, so a 2-year period of a price index, we're still looking at, almost 8-fold the value over that 2-year period. So what happened though was a lot of people started hearing about Bitcoin when it got to the $300, $400, $500 range, and they were buying it at that price. And you go back and watch my videos, I was expressing a lot of concern. There was stories on Reddit of people literally maxing out their credit card so they could buy these Bitcoins at $300, $400, $500, $600, $700, $800, and sometimes even $900 and $1,000. And I remember standing here in the same spot, obviously, doing videos saying, guys, this is pretty risky. Only, and this is my big thing, only invest money that you can afford to lose. Do not invest money that you would not be okay with if that money vanished tomorrow. And that's the problem with the marketplace. People see an opportunity, sometimes even just in the regular marketplace, of a 10, 12, 15% yield a year, and they forget that the risks are associated with the large yield and price. And that's the problem. If you don't want to worry about risk, you put your money in a CD or a very, very low risk mutual fund, and you sit back and relax, let the market handle it for you. However, if you want to make a large, I talk about this, Bitcoin is a very large risk. I don't want to spend too much time talking about risk and reward, and I've talked about that in previous videos. Now to today, February 29th, 2016, we're looking at $435 per coin. Now, why it's not anything to be achievable to the 2014 high market value prices of $1,000, $1,200, it's still substantial. One of the biggest arguments when the downcline in the 2014 era, when we were seeing a huge price decrease, people were saying, that's it, Bitcoin. We'll see. They pretty much thought Bitcoin was going to go away. I want to bring in a reference too. For today's price to stay steady, for it to stay at say $435 for the rest of the year, $1.3 million in Bitcoins have to be, or not Bitcoins, $1.3 million in USD equivalent currency has to be pumped into, I don't want to use pumped in is a bad word. Basically, and invest is a bad word too. A transfer of money into the Bitcoin economy. There we go. That's a good way to phrase it. A 1.3 million USD equivalent currency conversion into the Bitcoin economy must be observed. So that's still substantial. $1.3 million a day going into Bitcoin, that's still pretty cool, if you ask me. Also, one of the things I want to talk about is a 24-hour Bitcoin period. In a 24-hour market value and market volume, market value and volume of Bitcoin, 152 million, yes, 152 million USD equivalent. Now, granted, I know the skeptics out there are saying, well, Jason, if I have $10 million and I transfer it from wallet A to wallet B, technically that's a volume transfer. And while they're right, the likelihood of that situation is very, very minimal. Exchanges keep most of their coins in cold wallets. Now, much to be desired with the security applications of cold wallets, much still to be desired. Cryptsy. But the problem with that is we're trying to get more security to Bitcoin. Even though Bitcoin itself in the core protocol is very secure, there's much to be desired with applications that Bitcoin is built upon, or that are built upon Bitcoin. Also, the last thing I want to kind of cover is this idea that, man, Bitcoin is just that. How do I say this in a kind way? Bitcoin is still doing great. One of the biggest things too, I don't know if you guys have referenced, I'm getting ready to do a video here soon about this. The Bitcoin 0.12 core update has been out. And so they're really pushing the developers of Bitcoin, and again, it's open source, so anyone could be technically a developer, is really still progressing. And there's a lot of applications still in development and being attributed to working with or on top of Bitcoin. And also the cryptocurrency marketplace is still expanding rapidly with new coins, it seems like every 3 to 6 months. Lots of them, by the way. Some trying to get rich and famous on the pump and dump scheme, and some with legit, that's probably a bad word, more valuable assets to their cryptocurrency evaluations. Fancy terms. But so yeah, to me, now granted, I know you guys are probably upset because, I've been in this since the very beginning of Bitcoin. I remember when, I was here before the whole pizza with Bitcoin thing where they spent all those hundreds of Bitcoins, or it might have been thousands now if I think about it, on pizza with Bitcoin. Back in the day, Bitcoins, it was lucky to be worth a valuation of 2 cents per Bitcoin. So for someone like me to look at a price of $435, I'm still very happy. But it's all about riding the markets. It's about knowing when Bitcoin, or any market valuation of anything, a stock, a bond, a liquidity, property even, when knowing that the value is too high and knowing to be a smart investor in selling and then regaining back when it lowers price. But I think Bitcoin's still going great. If you look at the chart up here and I do the line of best fit, you'll notice that the price is still exponentially growing every year. We have the big outlier, 2014, but it brought attention to Bitcoin. I always talk about, as a joke, no one ever talked about Bitcoin in the mainstream media until 2014. I graduated in 2014. And yes, I'm on school board 2 years later. But in 2014, Bitcoin was going up exponentially high, up market value highest of $1,200 a Bitcoin. But the single most valuable point is when it crashed, the news media was all over it. Bitcoin is over, Bitcoin is dead, Bitcoin is gone. None of those three statements I just said proved to be true. And so with that, I hope that in 4 more years, I'm sitting here talking about Bitcoin, and we're talking about thousands of dollars. No promise, but I'm hoping. Do a line of best fit, and it's probable. But also to see how when Bitcoin gains more traction, and it gets more popularity, and more people get involved, and Bitcoin becomes something that is more commonly known, which we're not even at 1 or 2% of people know what Bitcoin actually is, so we're still safe on that. When it becomes as well known as Apple stock or Google or any of those major ones, then we can say Bitcoin's kind of at a steady point. But Bitcoin's still rapidly growing. It's the Facebook or the Twitter in its first 1 or 2 or 4 years of service where it doesn't even have it's not even publicly available stock. It's still venture capitalists looking at it. And for Bitcoin, it's the same way. So few people know about Bitcoin that it still has so much more potential. And so I leave you with that. Long live the Bitcoin, and I'll see you in 4 years.